bunch of people here already, so I think it's time to make a formal start to proceedings. So as ever, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the fifth in this second series of 7 British Council Gulf UK Alumni Network webinars. We here at ChangeSchool are as always very pleased and grateful to be delivering 7 webinars to you over the autumn through the efforts of your British Council hosts. I particularly want to mention as ever Claire Grundy and your country alumni network managers, without whose efforts this would not be happening. We have a lot of people registered for this webinar from all 6 countries of the GCC, so welcome to everybody. As we go through, for those of you for whom this is your first webinar with us, you may have questions that you want to ask. If you move your mouse on the screen, if you have a mouse at the moment, or touch the screen if you're on a device, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you will see a Q&A icon. You can put your questions there, and through the webinar and at the end, we'll do our best to answer them in the time that we have. You will also see a chat window. We will use that in the webinar as our host wants to make this interactive as possible. So, let me now introduce you to our webinar host today, Dr. Jeff Skinner. Jeff is Executive Director of the Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at London Business School. He's leader of the London Business School Entrepreneurial Summer School and creator of the UCL Technology Transfer Division, where he co-founded more than 30 technology-based spin-outs that collectively raised more than £30 million in first-round capital. Welcome, Jeff.
Hi, lovely to be here.
Ah, fantastic to have you here. So, Jeff, as I said, we're broadcasting to the whole GCC today, and I know that you have visited that part of the world many times, especially Oman.
Especially Oman, yes. I love Oman. I'm like 4 times there now, if you count the family holiday. Guaranteed sunshine at Christmas time, and I'm out there again actually this Friday and Saturday. So, yeah, I can't keep away.
Fantastic. So you're off to Oman on Friday and Saturday. I am a little bit jealous.
Good.
I'm a little bit jealous. So, without further ado, let me hand over to you, Jeff.
Okay, well, lovely. So I'm not speaking from anywhere as exotic as Tbilisi, if that's how you pronounce it. I'm London Business School on a cold and dark and gloomy evening, but hoping to spray a bit of sunshine, which is what I feel about, how I feel whenever I'm talking about this, my favourite topic, which is effectively enabling entrepreneurs, is what I do a lot of here at the school, and we probably have 30 or 40 startups each year, many of whom I see. And what struck me over the years is that the first thing that people tend to do, maybe less so now, but still, is I have a plan, I have an idea rather, and the first thing I want to do is to write the business plan. I somehow want to take this thing that has been fermenting in my brain for all this time, and I want to write it down. I'm ready. Hey, I'm set to go. Give me some pen and paper, and let me get going, and then I can go out and raise some money, and the rest will be history. And what we have discovered is that there's a much better way. I mean, I think some of you may be aware of the lean methodology, which is very much more about experiment before you set anything on stone down in paper. But actually, before even then, we believe that there is a stage, and we work with entrepreneurs on their ideas at an earlier stage still than even them getting out of the office and talking to customers and suppliers. Anyway, look. The whole webinar is based on the fact that I think we all have entrepreneurial tendencies. For some people, they're snuffed out or repressed. But you know what? We are all coming up with ideas for products and services, maybe that address business to business or business to consumer needs. We spot something and we think, why hasn't somebody done that? And I am going to acquire the power to do that and to provide a good or service to the world. And either that, or we see a way of producing something better or more efficiently. Now, this happens in 2 contexts, and I'm putting this up deliberately because this is how it actually carves down for the webinar today. Because sometimes we want to run this as our own independent startup, which I call entrepreneurship. It's saying, here is my thing, I'm the best one to run it, I need to run it as a freestanding venture, I'm going to raise some money and I'm going to create a new entity to do it. The alternative, and we see many students coming to us with this alternative, is that they're working for somebody and they've spotted an idea, not that they want to do, but that they want their company to do. I've called that entrepreneurship. It's a horrible word, but that's essentially what it is. They're thinking, I want to apply entrepreneurial thinking to my own organization to help it become more innovative. So that's it. But you know, it's much easier to find ideas. I mean, we have this heuristic that, you know, ideas are you know, there's 60 ideas to one that is any good, that anybody's going to do anything with. Ideas are relatively cheap. We find them all the time, and we find entrepreneurs who say that they're passionate about them and wanting to do something with them. But it's much more difficult when you want to persuade others. And, you know, no man is an island. We're always going to need other people to enable our venture. And so I say coming up with the idea is the easy bit. Finding others and persuading others to take them seriously and to invest their time, money, credibility in them is a great deal harder. You know, passion is not enough. We see a lot of this, inspiration, energy, excitement. The tragedy is when it turns into this, which is frustration, demotivation, resignation. You know, the world, my company didn't take me seriously. And then the tendency is then to blame the world or the company. Whereas I have an alternative idea here that says, in the first instance, it is the so-called entrepreneur who is to blame. Now, companies also need to nurture creative people too. I mean, we're living in an age of digital disruption. There are threats and opportunities everywhere. And the companies themselves need to nurture entrepreneurial thinkers. You know, we all know about Nokia and what happened to that. We all know with Kodak and what happened to that. There were people inside those companies who saw what was going to happen and had ideas to get out. Did the companies nurture those individuals effectively? Well, I don't know. But I do know, having worked in organizations, that very often the managers in those companies are not good at nurturing the creative talent within there. So I'm addressing you not only as those who come up with the ideas, but also as those who are nurturing other people, your own people inside organizations who come up with them. What do I do with them? How do I advise them? How do I draw the best out of them and their ideas? We also have this philosophy at LBS, nicely summed up by Peter Drucker, that entrepreneurship, if we ever ask a group of people, you know, what is the one attribute of an entrepreneur, they'll nearly always at the top of the list come back and say they need to be a risk taker. And that, it is true. However, entrepreneurship is mostly risky because so many of so-called entrepreneurs know what they're doing. The methodologies haven't been developed yet, but you know, today is just one of the remedies to that, to introduce you to a couple of powerful frameworks. So, as I say, I have two scenarios, two frameworks, first taking up 2/3 of the time, the other taking up 1/3 of the time. Those two scenarios you might have already guessed. One is, how do I develop the idea as a standalone venture, and how do I develop the idea within your organization? Two different scenarios: entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship. And I'm going to use a simple example, which I'll introduce any moment now. And I found both immensely useful when working with early stage entrepreneurs, of which I say I see many dozens every year. Once I have developed them, I hope that you'll be able to apply them to any innovative idea that you may have in the future, and I extend that to any innovative idea that an employee of yours might have in the future. Now, this is how so many people come to me with their venture. They describe it a cut gem, self-evident value. It's hard exterior. I'm supposed to look at it and say, gosh, isn't that beautiful? And when something is presented to me like that, I actually find it very hard. I think most people find it very hard not to say, yes, it is beautiful. Not least because you feel you're being sold to, you're being told, you're trying to be convinced, and therefore it's easier just to say, it's lovely, One reason being that it's the best way to get rid of people. In fact, this is what any new venture is. It is work in progress. It is merely our hypothesis. And so it is true with any idea I have, any idea you've got. It is just a hypothesis. It's in need of shaping, refining, or maybe rejecting. We don't know, but we do know that we need to ask people to find out. But we present it to them not as one of these, because that's where we are somehow trying to convince them with our own false logic and stories that something is amazing, when all the time they're thinking like this. You know, we presented this wonderful thing at the top of the pile, which looks so beautiful. All they can see is a very, very shaky foundations. As an entrepreneur, it is our job to pull out those risky things. It's our job to pull out the worries of the people we talk to who may know more about the market or the industry than we do. So how do we do this? Well, let's take an example. This is a real student with a real venture who came to me with an email which went something along these lines. He said, Jeff, I've got a great idea. What do you think? Here's the idea. There's a big problem when letting properties on Airbnb that I have identified, he says. An agent must always let you in. It's costly and unreliable and leads to very poor reviews if that first experience is dreadful because you spend half an hour on the street waiting for somebody to let you in. Good. He said, I have made a device that interfaces with entry phone systems, ubiquitous, any sort. The owner can trigger the system to let someone in or give them a code to let them in, works with all major types of entry phone, and there's two of us on the team, one electrical, one mechanical engineer. Hey, Jeff, isn't this a great idea? What do you think? And my first question to you, and this is Neil, this is where you pop back in, is to say, just faced with an idea like this, how do you respond?
That's
How
interesting.
do you respond to an email like that?
So what do you think, ladies and gentlemen? So you imagine you're Jeff, and a student of yours has written to you saying they've got this fantastic idea. The problem is that people, when they get on Airbnb, when they want to enter the property they've rented for the weekend or whatever it is, they can't get in. They are stuck outside. It takes half an hour getting the key together. So I've got this great idea. Oh no, we're going to have an electronic entry system. So how would you respond to that? What would you say to this person? One of them's a mechanical engineer, one of them's an electrical engineer. What would you say? What are you thinking when someone says this to you? Oh, there's a lot of thought going on.
You can see the little bubbles moving, can you?
I can feel them. I can feel them. Here we go. Aha! All right, here we go. This is a good one to start with. Marna's come out with, well, what would be the revenue model? That's interesting.
Well, we'll hold that thought. In fact, I will hold that thought by actually writing it down because that comes later. So you got some questions. They haven't clarified it. Okay?
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, Gajanan, another very good question. What percentage of people face this issue?
Yeah. Okay.
Very, very good. Very good.
So we're meeting questions with questions at the moment. That's fine.
Oh, here we go. Man, again, have you validated the problem? Yeah, these aren't people you've been teaching in Oman, are they?
No, but you know, it's interesting listening to these responses because very often, if I'm in a class of students and I have somebody at the front who says this is my great idea, there are points of clarification that they ask, which is great, but very quickly we get into the no, this will never work.
Well, we've got a couple of interesting questions straight away. Here we go. Look, whoa. How secure is the system?
Okay.
Right. Is this a problem faced with many Airbnb users?
Okay. Yeah. Well, we're going to hold these thoughts because these are good for the next question. And I have to say I'm delighted that they've jumped straight to the next question. Yeah. What I'm not hearing is what I, from this cohort, is what I often hear when, when you're putting this to somebody who hasn't been through this webinar, right? You know, what often comes back is after a few points of clarification, they start slamming it. They start saying, well, no, I wouldn't bother with this if I were you. No, it's not a great idea. And clearly that is, well, not very motivating. It may actually be true, but Also, what I realise, if the question's being posed to me, is that I don't actually know the answer. You know, I'm dismissing it without really knowing much about the field, much about the market, and much about the industry. So that's the first thing, is we don't judge it. And indeed, at LBS, we have this, however much we've seen the idea before, we have our severe doubts in it. The deal is, if you suspend belief in it, start treating it as a hypothesis rather than as a cut gem, we'll suspend disbelief. And we will work with you to help you to ask some of the right questions, rather than immediately going back and passing judgment on it. Because as I say, very often we're very poor judges. So, you know, we'll then, as part of this, ask them to distance themselves from the idea. They've got passion, and very often they feel that they themselves are the idea, but we'll ask them to distance themselves from the idea. Here's you, here's the idea, tear yourself apart, and then take the perspective of the investor. So, and this isn't an investor who is going to say, no, this is an investor who's going to be trying to say, well, you know, there are things I'm worried about. There are elements of this that would make me hesitate before investing. And the skill of the investor, as I say, is to ask the right questions and to have the right gut feeling that results in those questions being asked. Because each of the questions is not a, this won't work because of, it's much more likely to be a, have you thought about this? This is what most worries me. What has to go right? What might go wrong? And so I'm going to ask now, I think I've got something that is slightly missing here. So I'm going to ask now, you know, as an investor, to ask this question of you. What is it that worries you about this? What might make you hesitate? And Neil, you're back on again. And I'm just going to flip over to, this is very risky now,
I see. It's all about experimentation.
Pre-prepared whiteboard.
Oh, it's a word.
And it worked, yeah? So there's a problem, gaining entries to Airbnb properties, the solution, the device. 4G triggered by owner or agent and letting renters. Got it now, and we've got two clever engineers.
Well, so, go on, what's the question? What do you want people to
Well, the question is, I think it's, you know, from the folk we have on the webinar, I think they interpreted the last question as this question, which is good, which is to say, you know, so what are the questions that you would ask in return? What's worrying you about this? What do you think the entrepreneur ought to be worried about and bottoming out first before, well, before you give any money, but actually before they invest too much of their time on this?
Okay.
So, yeah.
What questions would we ask? So we've got a few already here, haven't we? We've got, well, there's quite a few. So what would be the revenue model? That's one.
Okay, so we got
demand. Yeah. We've got.
I'm sorry, I've fallen into the same trap here. Good, here we are. We've got revenue model.
Mm-hmm. What is the customer segment?
All right, yeah, that's good. So let's have this customer segment. And that's what I'm going to put down here. Customer segment.
Ahmed is talking about what is the risk? Is it worth it to invest? So I guess we've got a risk and return there somewhere.
Well, I suppose there is. Yeah, I mean, that's the very big question. Is it worth investing? I'll just put that up here. Is it worth investing? And if you like, everything else we're putting down below is
all part of that.
Trying to answer the question. Yeah. What else have you got?
There's quite a few about customer readiness and customer adoption. So something about where we have the will customers adapt to the system? Is it a problem faced by many users? That sort of thing.
Okay, so we've got something up here about sort of market size.
Yeah, how many people are after it? Yeah.
Obviously, this is related to the customer segments as well. Who wants it? And I think earlier on we have to say any validation. I think that was one from.
Yeah, we've got market possible size here, which is sort of what you've covered. We've got, is there a need in the market? So there's quite a lot about that coming through.
Yeah, is any validation, do people really face this problem? Yeah.
There's a couple of people asking, has it been tested? Now, there's a couple of aspects to that. And I think mainly, but please clarify, Ahmed, if I'm right or wrong. I think they're talking about the product. There's a few things here about the product. Has it been tested?
Right.
So there's another one here about
user feedback. And this brings us straight into built, tested.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have this lovely phrase, minimum viable product created, but you know, you build the minimum viable product in order to test it. So what's been the user feedback? Go on.
Got someone saying, have we validated the problem?
Well, customer segment, okay, market size. And I suppose here we have for who, which is kind of the same as we had before. Nothing wrong with that, which is customer segment.
Yeah. And again, we've got similar things here coming out about, has it been tested? Is there any profit? Which again is a...
Hold on. Okay, so we've got the revenue model, which is one thing.
Yeah.
But actually the whole idea of dear me, sorry, I'm just
profitability.
Good, that's better. Profitability. And here we get into, obviously, there's the sort of the gross, the unit economics, and we have net. Because there are likely to be all sorts of ancillary costs to actually making this thing work. Anyone else?
So again, we've got something about product here in terms of technology. Oh, what's a backup plan? What's plan B? What's the backup plan? That's an interesting one.
Okay, yeah, all right. What tends to happen is that faced with a pile of feedback, it isn't as if somebody has a plan B, but to a creative mind, they are fluid, and we say that these ventures evolve conversation by conversation. And every time you talk to somebody to test your hypothesis, they come back with a whole pile of suggestions, some of which can lead you to say, well, I'm just going to dump what I was saying before. But other times they come back and say, actually, that's a much better idea. And so I'm going to do it somehow.
So here's an interesting one for Said. He says, also we're talking about the cost of it, but has also said, what's in it for Airbnb?
Oh, well, actually
who's the customer, I guess?
Yeah, it is. That's exactly right. Is Airbnb the customer? Actually, is this really B2B or B2C? Question. That's a big question to ask. Yeah.
And there's a big, I mean, Mohammed's getting the hang of where we are, and he's asking about business models now. He's saying, what's the business model? What's the business model type even?
Yeah, the business model is an ambiguous word, I have to say, because business model is, revenue model is part of the business model. The business model is actually which bits do we do and which bits are other people going to do up and down the value chain. And it's the business model is also who are we making this for. So, the business model is quite fuzzy, whereas the revenue model is very precise.
So where are we, Jeff? I think we've...
Okay, so where are we? Getting there. Well, first of all, it's interesting. I find it interesting. This is how it evolves. Obviously, I come from a business school, so I've written a 2x2 grid. That was up there before. So there's something hidden in the background. And the purpose of this part of the webinar is really to say, help me to construct my 2x2. And once the boxes are filled in, then I can reveal the actual 2x2, which I'll do in a couple of minutes' time. But you can see that you did it. It's not rocket science; it's common sense. And the comforting. Well, let me move on. We have missed out a box here, and I'll explain all the boxes later. There was one whole class of comments here that we're missing. There's
a very, very unpopulated Y there, isn't there?
There's an unpopulated Y, which we'll come to at the moment, because nobody's really spoken about actually, and let me put this up here, TEAM. All right, so there's a clue for you. And down here, we've missed out a whole load of stuff on potential competition. Not saying that there won't be, but this is really saying that if you're faced with it, what would you do? what are the sources of competitive advantage that you could have into it?
Here's a thought. If there's a hint, if the Y shape is, because we've had a lot of stuff about the market, which is great.
Yep.
If some of this is about the team,
yep.
What would we ask about the team? What would you want to know, ladies and gentlemen, about the team? Right.
Now, in this sense that if investors say they invest in team product, and it's actually the team that can make can go in with a poor product and make a success of it by pivoting, but a bad team will make a hash of any idea. Good.
So what would you want to know about the team, ladies and gentlemen? What do you think?
What worries you about the team?
Well, what worries you about the team? Indeed. What might worry you about this particular team? There are two clever, absolutely, there are just two, there are two clever engineers. So there you go, you've got two clever engineers creating this device. Okay, here we go, first one. Gajanan, have they got any sales or operations experience?
Sales or ops experience.
Yeah, do they accept feedback? Are they professional, Haifa?
Okay, so are they professional? How you're going to measure this, I don't know. But very often for the team side, it's one of the reasons for building a minimum viable product is that if you can do that, then you've shown yourself to be quite professional, especially if you go out and you ask an investor what they think of the idea. They tell you actually what you need to do is to build one and to test it and then come back. If you then test it, build it, test it, and then come back, kind of that's showing you that you're a listener. As I say, investors invest in lines, not dots. They would like to see you once and then like to see how you listened. And if you listened well, then they take you to be a good listener. Anyway, what else we got up there?
So there's something about balanced team, which Salah's talking about, and we've got people doing similar things like you need doers and thinkers. Different minds sometimes guide. So to be able to have a global business, something about the balance in terms of the way people think and how they are. There's something about technical expertise. So are they balanced in terms of how they think? Are they balanced in terms of technical expertise? Ooh, nice one, Hassan. Do they have good network and social connections with customers and market players?
Funny you should mention that.
You should mention it.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to succeed far better, I suggest, if Airbnb is your customer, if there's somebody who you know very well at Airbnb. Because do you know? Because you're going to be able to get in there. They're going to have immediate social capital. They're going to know, like, and trust you. So, do you know anyone in market? Is a good question because things are likely to go faster when you know people.
Oh, Mohammed, risk level.
Okay, I think at this point we'll probably sum up because we've got most of our boxes ticked. Yeah. So risk level, ambition. Are they with us? Last thing we want is a group of people who really don't want to turn this into a lifestyle business. If we're an investor, we want to see it grow big, and if there isn't a level of ambition there, then okay, I'm going to save that, and I'm going to stop my sharing on that, and I'm going to continue my sharing on this, and I'm going to move on. And in the next two slides, you will see most of what you've said actually organized in a different way, but actually stated. So here we go. So investors. And investors, first of all, they worry about the song and they worry about the singer. They worry about the venture and the team. Two classifications. And as I shall go and show, there's really only 4 things they worry about in terms of the song and 3 things they worry about in terms of the singer. And so the framework I'm going to introduce is 4 + 3 = 7 domain. 7 domain framework. And it goes something like this. It's been researched by a colleague of mine here at London Business School who took a number of ventures, took them out to many investors and listened to what they said. And based on that feedback, he categorized the worries, closed set of worries that investors have when they're considering when they're considering new ventures. And so this is how it goes. 4 worries about the song. Now I'm putting up a blank 2x2 here first because I just want to explain what the columns and rows are. On the left-hand side, we have market worries. And on the right-hand side, we have industry worries. I'll go on and explain. And at the left-hand side, top row, we have sort of the macro level. Now, these are typically aspects of the market or industry that aren't peculiar or special to your product. They are generally things that you can discover through secondary level market research, often without talking to anybody very much at all. Whereas at the bottom, the micro, this is specific to your venture. And you'll be here thinking about specific users, specific behaviors. And on the industry side, you'll be thinking about specific ways of avoiding competition and building value. So capturing value. So let's just continue on so you can see where I am on this. First of all, market, macro market. Now, we had things here about size of market. I'd like to expand on that under the category, under the heading, does it move the needle? Is it big enough? What's the size? And somebody said of the best segment, so am I. So have you understood what segment you're going to go for and what's the size of that segment? Have you, if you like, got the total addressable market? Do you have an idea of that? Because, the last anybody wants to invest in is what we call in the trade trombone oil, something that can be extremely useful, but that only about 300 people in the whole world are ever going to use. Trombone oil, we call it. We're looking at current growth, which can be good or bad. How fast is this particular segment or market or problem growing? Sometimes if it's growing very fast, it means we've missed the boat. And if it's not growing at all, it might mean that we're too early. So this is really a matter of timing. And then finally, also on the subject of timing, is growth trends. This comes to the issue of why now. Now, on the basis that I'm seeing dozens of ideas every year, and many of them are the same. I have to tell you, most are variants of previous ideas. And that begs the question that if something is actually a good idea, and it has been for the last 5 years, there's probably a good reason why somebody hasn't done it, or maybe they have and they all failed. So investors tend to be very wary of any idea that has been possible for 5 years. And if nobody's done it, there's a good reason. So you're always looking at the trends. What do you believe is the trend that's driving this new opportunity? If you think of it in terms of tectonic plates, then where is the green space in the middle being created? What are the technical possibilities that have opened up? What are the regulatory? What are the natural trends? What are the socioeconomic trends, behavioral trends, economic trends? So why now? Why is this a good opportunity now? And when I accompany entrepreneurs to investors, these are the questions I hear asked. What is the total addressable market and why now? That sums up that box. Then down here, will they really buy it? And this, cut to the chase, is summed up in the question, have you spoken to any customers and what did they tell you? If the entrepreneur then turns around and says, oh, it's too early for that, I've got to develop it more before I can go out and talk to anybody, huge mistrust. It's hardly ever too early to go out and talk to a customer. Many entrepreneurs say to me, but surely if we go out and talk to a customer, they'll steal our idea. Chances are, well, I've never known it happen. You usually have to ram ideas down people's throats rather than stop them from competing your way. But will they really buy it? Is this really a user pain? Have you validated the pain? Have you worked out product market fit? Many entrepreneurs spend the first year of their venture, even before they've raised any money, trying to figure out the product market fit. And you only do that by getting out into the market, giving them things to play with, to test, to get that feedback from them, and to discover what the intuitive interface is between the solution and the problem. And then finally, it's especially with B2B propositions, it is, do you know how these companies make decisions? And surely, the health industry. That's a big one. They're very slow at making decisions. So have you really understood what it takes? Do you really understand it for a medical innovation? It takes about 7 years from conception to widespread adoption. Do you understand how your customer thinks? Then we get up into the top right-hand box. Is there profit for me, or is there profit for somebody else? It may be that you've got a great growth trend, you've got a great product that people really want, but it could be that somebody else is going to make the money and not you. What's your revenue model? Have you actually thought through the costs? You know, I work a lot with fashion startups. Yeah, many fashion startups. And the first thing that absolutely astonishes them is that the retailer margin is 300%. And they've been hoping that they can get away with 20% and keep 80% of the money themselves. Then they find that actually they only keep 25% of the money themselves, and the others go to the retailer, because the retailers are powerful. So we ask the question, is this a blue ocean or a red ocean? Is there lots of rivalry? Are there lots of other people doing the same thing? Secondly, what's the unit economics, both gross and net? Have you worked through in detail the numbers based on your knowledge of the value chain? And thirdly, around that value chain, who owns the supplies and the channels? Are you really the scarcity, or in actual fact, are your suppliers and your distributors, are they the ones, your channels to market, are they really the ones who are going to make all the money, not you? So go out, my friend, go out and make sure you understand the margin structure and the power dynamics within your industry. That is my advice. And then fourthly, it's all about competition. Will others eat your lunch? Are you going to retain the margin once other people finally catch on? Are you simply doing a load of market research for better equipped competitors? One of the most depressing things I ever say to an entrepreneur. And then finally, you know, where is your lasting competitive advantage? Go out and find other products that are similar to yours that seem to have succeeded, and ask the question, why is it that they managed to maintain their margin? You know, did they have a patent? Did they have a brand? Did they have first mover advantage? What is it that made them successful in the same category? And then go and see how you can adopt the same strategy. And the question here is, why won't Google kill you? That's what investors ask. It may not be Google, it can be any category killer, Procter & Gamble, you know, British Airways, I mean, whatever it is, the category killer, why won't they just imitate you away? So they're the worries about the song. And then there's worries about the team, which I won't go into in the same detail, because largely a team can't answer it. All they can do is to prove it. But it's really this idea around mission, vision, appetite for risk. Do they know where they're going, and are their ideas big enough? Do we share that? How well connected up and down the value chain can I make things happen fast because I know people? And finally, what's my ability to execute on key success factors? And you had this. This is the whole thing. This is what I love introducing this framework, is because as soon as I put up the simplest of problems, the simplest of venture ideas, immediately you have it within you to ask the right questions. Between you in this case. And then once you've done that, it first of all makes you into a great advisor, because now you know the questions to ask other people and the questions that you want to ask them to ask themselves, which is lovely feedback. And secondly, it kind of makes you realize what you need to do with your own ideas in order to test and validate them. So this is a 7-domain framework. John Mullin's New Business Road Test. There's a book out there. You can buy it. It's not very much. You knew it already between you. And now it's part of your toolbox, your toolkit. So use this. Use the framework. Now you know that there are only 7 worries. It makes the world far more manageable. Use it to question and solicit feedback on your own ideas and give constructive feedback to employees and colleagues. The objective of using this framework is, first of all, to spot holes in a venture idea before others do, and secondly, to start collecting evidence to assuage these worries. So that's the end of the first bit. Okay, I know it's a whistle-stop tour, but this framework is a fundamental framework in the methodology of any entrepreneur and anybody managing entrepreneurs. So get conversant with it and start using it. Now you understand it. All I've done is to introduce you to it. Now I want to move on and into another interactive session. Here we are. Here's the second of the two scenarios that I was speaking about, the corporate entrepreneur. And life gets more complicated inside a corporation. We know all that, which is one of the reasons often why entrepreneurs want to start their own business, is because they completely lost it with their own employer who didn't seem to take them seriously. So the only way they can pursue their idea is independently. But sometimes you need the resources of the corporate, and you genuinely believe that it's good for your employer. Therefore, you want to persuade them to invest in it. And then the organization behaves irrationally, like most do. And this results in employee frustration or sometimes resignation. And sometimes that resignation is literally, in which case you've lost a creative person, or the employer losing great ideas and talent. So what's going on and what can you do about it? And I've got another example. So listen up, here's the example. Your company, the company I'm talking about, creates new fragrances for luxury brands. This is real, incidentally. All my examples are always real. So a company creates new fragrances for luxury brands. It has thousands of proprietary ingredients, base fragrances, raw fragrances. So the client comes along to specify what they want for a new fragrance, for anything from a perfume to a soap to making a scent inside their new store, whatever it is, they come along and try and describe in words or otherwise what it is they want. Then an elite group of experts inside the organization, they're called noses, creates a long list. These are the creme inside the organization. These are the gods, the noses. The clients then meet the noses and shortlist the fragrances, combinations they like. The noses create variants of those, and then they repeat, maybe through several iterations, and many months later, a choice is made. The company invoices 100,000, very high gross margin on this because most of the ingredients exist already. Long-established relationships with most of the brands, so they keep coming back and back and back, and the technology really hasn't changed inside a century. Here they are. Here's the noses, smelling away, and here is your corporate entrepreneur, your intrapreneur, if you like. Tom. He's all my protagonists are called Tom, virtually all of them. Tom's a biologist in the R&D unit of this company. He's part of a brand new team that they brought in to test for allergies. Reads a fascinating article on artificial noses. This artificial nose stuff has been around for a long time, but never ever been able to match the expertise of the real human noses. However, with artificial intelligence, they seem to be improving rapidly. Clearly a disruptive technology with clear cost and time savings. Tom's met the scientists, and as a scientist himself, he's gone into it and he believes. He could exclusively license the technology from the university that's developed this, and more than that, Tom could, he thinks, even lead this inside the organization. So he makes a case to the fragrance unit and receives a long no, frustratingly long no. And he's confused and disappointed. Surely this was a no-brainer. So back to you, Neil. What's going on?
Well, so that's interesting. So a long no, ladies and gentlemen, means a no that takes a long time.
And is usually informal when it does come back, with no rational reason, just, no, we decided not to do that.
Which is the worst no you can get.
Which is as bad as you can, and as frustrating as you can get.
And it's frustrating, just discouraging, frustrating. It's as bad as it gets. If you get a no, but it's quick, you know there's something you can move on to, something you can change. So a long no is a bad thing. So here we go, Tom. He reckons he's got this technology, this AI that can fundamentally replace noses. That's what we're doing here. And he goes to his company and says, look, I think we should do this because it replaces the nose. It's more reliable. It's more consistent. And after a long, long time, they say, no, we're not doing it. So the question is, why might that have happened?
Right.
What might have happened?
They are all drawings.
What do you think? What's going on? Why has it taken a long time and then these people finally say no? When it would, if you look at the spreadsheets, it would have benefited the company. There's an entrepreneur, but within a company, an entrepreneur. What do you think?
Any ideas here for everyone?
Yeah, we all think you're making them think today, Jeff.
Sorry?
You're making them think today.
That's the idea. So it's going to turn into another 2x2, isn't that reassuring?
We are a business school academic. It does have to. It's obligatory.
So anybody got any ideas on what's going on here?
Why might they have said no?
Yep.
After a long time.
It's quite encouraging if people don't know, because it means I've got an answer for them, carry on.
What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Why am I? Oh, here we go. We're starting here. The moment one starts, we're away. Is man coming? Company. Oh, so we've got. Oh, right. So, man is saying, well, hold on. And you're absolutely right, man. He's saying they're suggesting a paradigm change.
Is what, sorry? I didn't hear that.
The man is saying, well, hold on a minute. You're suggesting a paradigm change.
It is a paradigm change, but that's
right. So therefore, why? Yeah. So therefore, why might have said no? So, Gajaman's talking about company priorities.
Okay, well, that's okay. So that's good. Company priorities. That's a great reason. Company priorities.
It's not coming up, Jeff. Will you type?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you can hear me, but you can't see me. Yep. Okay. Company better. Priorities.
Yeah, like that. We've also got nice one here from Man who's explaining what he meant. It's rocking the boat, because it's a paradigm change. It's rocking the boat.
Right. Yeah. So I put up there. So because I like that. So it's rocking the boat. Whose boat? I wonder. Rocking the boat. Yep.
He's gone further. Old school versus new school.
Oh, so it's sort of Tom challenging hierarchy. Yep.
And so add to a bit of that, Gajaman's talking about they're not seeing the need to change. Because business is fine right now. Thank you very much. Business is going smoothly.
Very happy as is. We have to ask here, this company or noses. But anyway, yep.
Oh, yeah, we can do that. So then what have we got? What else have we got here? So we've got some simple stuff from Haifa, things like bureaucracy.
Okay, so it might indeed be, I'm going to leave that there, that's better. So it could be sort of company processes, bureaucracy. I mean, many people say that bureaucracy is a bad thing in the same way that they think that politics is a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing at all. I mean, everybody needs bureaucracies because that's standard operating procedure and processes. So maybe that's the issue. Yep.
There's a couple of very nice things here. So the one thing is there's something about target market not clear. What problem are we trying to solve? What's the benefit?
Right. So our argument not made.
That's from Hussein. It's from Mohammed.
Criteria. Not satisfied. Maybe something like ROI or something like that. Okay. Yep. Go on.
Salah, presentation skills of Tom. Can he make the case?
Did he make the case? Well, yes. This is all right. So, did Tom make a case? And I find here that. Now, how much of a case does Tom frigging well have to make? I mean, how much does he have to say? This is surely a no-brainer. I mean, I've summed this up in, sorry, you can see me getting terribly animated here, but I've summed this up in one slide. You know, how much of a presentation does this actually need for these noses to get it? But anyway, carry on.
Right, well, so what else we've got? Some about experimentation. Okay. So actually, we've had some people saying on a slight tangent, they don't know how to go about it. So someone here, man here, has had that experience through lots of employee who was proposing a research project, but the company, the organization didn't quite get it. They don't know how to do it.
All right. So they don't know how to go about it. This is all new. This is disruptive, which it is. We live in an age of disruption. So it's disruptive, not sure how to assess. Manage, question mark, that sums it up.
Balamur again is asking about the competition environment, and as is Ali talking about the market is saturated. There might be something about the market that they don't think is going to work.
Yep, so misunderstand market. These are all good reasons. And I have to say down the bottom here, it could be that we don't want this as a company because it means that the whole thing becomes automated and, where's the margin goes away. This is absolutely fine. And you don't understand what the the product is. The fragrance brands actually love coming over here because we give them the most amazing dinner and the most amazing, time when they're here, and that's what they enjoy. They don't want this substitute, even they don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Indeed, there's something about Mohammed talking about how much human involvement is required in the using of artificial noses. There's something about why are we getting rid of the humans here.
Yeah.
And then, we're almost done actually. So in the last one, so again, there's something about old school versus new school, and those change management issues. Top management comes from the old school.
Yeah.
Things
okay. So top management wants to stay that way. Not have Tom in charge of them.
Yep. And very last point, because this is quite a nice one. Yep. There's a couple here, but I'm just going to go with this one. You lose know-how. Once you've lost the noses, you've lost them.
Yeah. So this is going to be another one here. Lose know-how. And that, I think that can probably go over here as well. We don't understand how we're going to retain our competitive position under this new paradigm. I can't do it, but it should be over here as well. All right, well, look, that's great. And as before, no, you're not supposed to put it in the top right-hand side. I'll come to why not in a minute. So 3 boxes is absolutely great. And I just want to introduce to you what's going on here. So if I save this now, and then I'm going to stop the share. You're going to see me in all of me, and then I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint slide again. Hopefully, here we are. I'm just going to give a little bit of explaining what's going on. Here's a few pictures. Let me see if I can make this go now. There we go. This is from a wonderful book called Disciplined Entrepreneurship by a guy called Bill Orlett at MIT. And he talks about the process and how many people are actually involved in any one decision. And if you don't understand who's involved and all those people who have to say yes or who mustn't say no, then as an entrepreneur, you're basically lost because you don't know what the process is. Here's another one, taking a cartoon here. This is, I'm a know-it-all. Well, tell me something I don't know. They don't want or trust Tom as a leader. Nothing wrong with the idea, but who is this person who's just joined the organization? Don't want him in charge. For the noses, is it asking turkeys to vote for an early Christmas? Well, this is lovely. We're all out of a job. Just understand that there may not be something in it for individuals, even if there is something in it for the firm. They can be totally bewildered by the technology or its implications, or sometimes you can have yesterday's management in place. Television. Here we are. This is from stupid sayings of senior executives in the last century. Won't be able to hold on to any market it captures after the first 6 months. People will soon get tired of staring at a plywood box every night. Completely wrong. Didn't get it. But hey, that is the management that is there, and it's not going anywhere fast. So we recognize all these things. And then here we go into my framework with a gasp of breath. This is what's going on. And when I say this to an entrepreneur, it's a moment when they think, oh, that's what's going on. And that's what I want to get out of you. 2 axes here. On the bottom, it's understanding belief. And to the left, it's when they have a very high understanding or belief in the technology or product that you're proposing. And to the right, it's a very low understanding or belief. Up the left-hand side, it's interest or incentive. In other words, at the bottom, if it works, we really, really want it. And at the top, it's we get it. If it works, we really, really don't want it because it works against a personal interest inside the organization. So let's just have a look. On the, let's take the bottom right first. I've called this the scared response. This is when the people who you've put the technology or the idea to are really not competent to judge. They leap into the unknown. It's a leap for them into the complete unknown, and anything where there is unknown is perceived risk. Risk is not absolute. Here, the risk is higher because I don't understand it. Perhaps they can't visualize the total outcome in business terms as well. If this happens, where's our competitive advantage? There may be one, but we don't get it. And so, what are we supposed to do? We're out of our depth. It does sound important, but let's just wait. That's how it's summed up down there. Top right-hand box is, I've labelled it, it doesn't work for me being the individual. You know, there's a fundamental power shift going on here. It makes me redundant, even worse. Even if it works, then, you know, if it works, I get a little bit of praise. If it fails, I get an awful lot of blame. You know, it's the whole, we've heard so many before that success has many fathers and failures are orphans, and you might be the one holding that baby, if you don't mind the mixed metaphor. And sometimes it can be, it displaces my ideas. There's only so much R&D funding, and I want my R&D funded. I don't want this new R&D funded. But you get the flavour of it. You know, this is a good idea possibly, but not for the people with the power inside the organisation. Bottom left hand, which is happily where we have most of the suggestions, is a kind of rational box. You know, it doesn't meet with agreed criteria. It doesn't poor fit with market strengths, poor fit with strategy. And so for some reason, you know, it's not good enough for us in one way or the other. So just to finish off here, I put down here, bottom right-hand corner, you see it's a sort of not understood here. Top left, it's the not invented here syndrome, which many of us have heard of. And down the bottom here, it's proudly found elsewhere, which is an acronym that's gaining credence in organizations that believe themselves to be masters of open innovation. So what could Tom have done differently? And here I'm just going to speed on. I think every time you gave a suggestion, you also gave a solution in actual fact. You know, what could he have done differently? And here are some strategies to consider. Taking the same bottom right-hand side, scared response. You know, if they're scared of it, then introduce it to them slowly. Stage trials, experiments. You know, you could suggest that one of them come over to the university with you so they can see it for themselves in action. Do another experiment where, you know, you give the technology some a task to do, which has already been done by the noses, and see whether the noses got it right or whether the new artificial nose got it right, what sort of correlation there was, because that is the sort of result that is presented in a way that the company will believe and will respect. And if they want it, then they'll think, oh, this is worth investing in a staged way. You can do a scenario planning with the company. I mean, so what does this mean for the industry? I mean, if we don't take it on, will somebody else take it on? So we mustn't just consider our own tiny company here. We've got to consider what this disruptive technology actually means for the industry as a whole. Is the status quo really an option? And finally, down here is a suggestion. You can find trusted experts. You know, why should you believe me, Tom? After all, I have an interest in making this happen because I'm going to be leading it. So bring in somebody else who is a neutral person who can talk about this and who the power makers, the decision makers can trust. Top right-hand box, basically it's build a coalition. What Tom has done wrong here is to say, let me lead it. You know, if he really believes this is a good idea for the company, then he should be finding somebody, a nose, an innovative nose, an entrepreneurial nose, who is willing to say, yeah, I'll lead this. You know, you can come and work for me in my division, you can make it all happen, but I'm going to be the one who's going to lead this. So don't associate the new idea with me being in charge of it. Let somebody else lead. Position it as inevitable. You know, if you can say, well, you may not like it, but it's coming anyway, so why don't we get in there first? Another one, of course, is to leapfrog and go directly to the board. Very risky strategy indeed, because you'll make all sorts of enemies within the company and they'll probably only refer it down to the fragrance unit anyway. But if you believe that a particular unit is getting in the way, then, you know, what else are you to do than to lobby further up in the organisation? High risk. Bottom left-hand box is the, I get it, but I think you're wrong. In which case, you're straight into 7 domains territory. That's the feedback you'll get. And they will start asking you questions along the lines of, Have you spoken to anybody? Have you spoken to clients? Would you go and speak to clients, see what they think? Let's work out the new margin structure. How are we going to stay ahead in this game? What's the market size for this? Is there a bigger market that we could address in addition to the one we've got at the moment? These are the types of 7 domain questions that can be asked. So different strategies for different diagnoses. And what I'd say to any corporate entrepreneur is try to get the lay of the land. Don't be naive and believe that better mousetraps sell themselves inside organizations. You've got to get out and you've got to understand the internal decision-making process criteria and who makes the decisions and their level of ability to digest the idea, disruptive idea that you're putting to them. So that's where we are with that. Again, in a framework that I've found to be very powerful and revealing of the way in which organizations work. I wish somebody had explained this to me when I was 20 years old. So, drawing to an end, what can we learn here? It's fine to be passionate. Everybody loves passion, but don't lose the objectivity. At the very beginning, identify your assumptions and leaps of faith. That is both for a freestanding venture and what am I assuming about the way in which this organization works. So it's within organizations as well. It's always about who has to do what, who has to be with me in order for my idea to actually succeed. Always think from the perspective of the investor, internal or external. Use the 7 domain framework to identify investor worries and use the not invented here, not understood here framework to analyze internal stakeholders. Maxim of management, actually, always seek out the disquieting evidence. Never go in pitch and sell mode, always go in storytelling and inquire mode. That is the way in which you're far more likely to uncover the hidden truths that you need to know and the truths that will actually destroy your value proposition. If an idea doesn't fly as it should do, then always blame yourself, not others. That's the first place to look. It might be the fault of somebody else, but always look within yourself first. Did I do something wrong? And final word from me is this: ventures are like pancakes. You usually end up winning the first one. So there's nothing like that learning experience. Learning, it failed, figuring out why it failed. What have I learned? How am I going to do better next time? That's fine. And that's actually why we try and encourage students here with even flaky ideas to give it a go, because they're going to learn a load in trying to make it fly, even when it shouldn't and eventually doesn't. So with that, Neil, where are you? I'm back here. Got time for a couple of questions if anybody wants one. Otherwise, I think we're done.
I was wondering what your pancake recipe was going to be. But that's fantastic, Jessica. Thank you. So you've given us a really good way of thinking about a venture that's entrepreneurial. Another good way of thinking about almost any new project that you're trying to make happen in it when you're inside a business, which is really, really fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a little bit of time. Does anybody have any questions for Jeff? Those are 2 quite intense models that Jeff came up with, and they're very, very interesting. Does anybody like to?
Probably ambitious.
Would anybody like to ask him anything about them?
If not, you know where I am. I'm very easily found. If something occurs to you in the middle of the night or tomorrow morning in the shower.
Well, I think a few of our guests here are actually old pupils of yours, Jeff, as well.
Are they really? Oh dear.
Yeah, from SMEF from the SME Development Fund work in Oman, in Muscat. So I think we have some people here that know you of old. And Hussein has actually said here, hello, Jeff, you are very welcome in Oman. Go on then, Gajanan.
All right, well, I'll look forward to
a question coming. There's a question coming. Gajanan says he's got a question. He's just typing it out, I guess. When are you flying to Oman?
Friday evening. Friday. There first thing Saturday. Resting up.
Okay, so Hussein is asking, will he be able to see you, or are you too busy?
Send me an email. I've no idea. That's probably one for him and me rather than to share with everybody.
Yeah, I would suggest so. But so here's a question on the team. If you do, okay, he said, if you don't have all the skills in the team, is that okay, or how would you handle that?
No, you first of all, you don't know whether you've got the skills. And most entrepreneurs are most unlikely, and they prove themselves by what they do. So, you demonstrate competence, and that sometimes is a reason to take the venture forward, so that you can show to an investor, look, I really am committed, and look what I've done, and therefore I must be good. So team competence builds up over time. But there are some skills that you need to hit the ground running with, like if you're going to be depending on brand building, or some type of large-scale B2C selling, or even social media, and you're an engineer, as in this case, you haven't got those skills. It's going to take far too long to accumulate them, and therefore you just need to acknowledge that there's a gap in the team, and that probably means you have to raise a bit more money in order to employ the right person. What investors hate is unknown unknowns. If you say, no, we can do this, and they don't believe you, you're dead. If you say, no, we can't do this, we know we've got to bring somebody on board who can, then they respect that.
So we've got some really interesting questions here, Jeff. So what I'm going to do is there's 2 or 3. So let's do them quite rapid fire so that we get through them. So so firstly, that answer was great, because fundamentally it comes back down to make or buy, doesn't it? You either learn it yourself or you bring it in.
Yep.
Salah has asked, does this apply to all industries? Do these frameworks apply to all industries?
I think they're universal frameworks. I mean, you've got to adapt them a little bit to the contingency. I mean, what we tend to find is not that the framework is universal, but depending on the type of venture it is, then one or other box is more likely to be more important. I mean, if you're in a real dog-eat-dog or red ocean industry, then the issue around top right-hand box, are you going to be allowed to make any sort of margin for very long within this industry, is the one that worries people. So what I tend to do is I get the entrepreneur up the front, I get a class full of people there, and I draw up my little box and I say, right, hands up, who's worried about the top left-hand box? And a load of hands go up, bottom left-hand, top right-hand, bottom right-hand team. And, you can do 4 ventures, and people will have an entirely different range of worries depending on what sort of venture it is. But most people's gut instincts are pretty good. So the framework is universal, I believe, but the way in which the worries are distributed amongst the first 4 boxes is very different.
So there's an interesting one here, Ahmed, when he's basically asking, how can we tell someone that their idea isn't good without hurting?
You don't. That's the whole point. You don't tell somebody their idea isn't very good. That's it. Because most of the time, I mean, if I knew what ideas were good and what ideas were bad, I would not be sitting in, I'd be sitting in a palace somewhere, because I would be great at investing. I don't. I'm a very poor judge of those ideas, so I suspend belief. What I'm doing is throwing it back on them to say, look, these are the things I worry about, and you should go out and in the spirit of testing this as a hypothesis, ask other people. Draw out the framework and say which of the 4 boxes worries them the most. And then, as a subject of an entirely different webinar, depending on where those worries are, you have strategies for addressing them. Right. So, but you very rarely...
Indeed. So we've got 2 more. So what I'm doing is I just want to do those 2 more, and then we'll be done. So the first one is, in my region, it's hard to find data about local businesses. Very little research is conducted, and entrepreneurs and SMEs tend to hide from data, especially from financial statements. What do you recommend?
Oh, dear. Well, I mean, first of all, I think every industry has its own norms, and those are known by industry. I mean, I've spoken to several businessmen out in Oman, when I've been doing panels out there, and they know their industry pretty well. They know how things work and who are the innovators in the chain, who makes the money out of this, how difficult things are to penetrate. So in those sort of situations, you find an industry leader, and you don't go to sell them. You're not selling your idea, you're going asking for help. And very often, if you go out explicitly saying, I need some help, tell me why I shouldn't waste the next 4 years of my life doing this thing, then you can get an audience with them. And if they like you, then they'll help you. Last one, Neil.
Right, last one. So I'm in a private jet maintenance company. I would like to convince higher management of a feasible business we have, as they focus on commercial planes only. Unfortunately, they want to shut down our hangar. What should we do?
They want to shut down what, sorry?
Their hangar.
Oh, okay.
So what should we do when it appears that people in the top have no vision about lost opportunities?
Apart from the glib answer of go out and buy the hangar on the cheap and do it yourself, which is, I suppose, one, or find some people who will, so pick it up at rock bottom prices because you're seeing value in something that they don't. I think the first step is to just understand what are the reasons for this being shut down, because there may be very good reasons that you don't actually know about. Company strategy or I don't know, but you find that out, and you have the conversations with somebody just to say, not I'm proposing it, but why wouldn't the company consider something like this? So you're going in not pitching but asking, and I think if I leave you with any message at all, that would be it. Don't assume anything, identify leaps of faith, and then go in and verify them. Humbly.
Yeah, I think that's exactly that. The thing is, that is the message, isn't it, Jeff? That's been fantastic. Thank you very much.
All right, well, my pleasure.
So don't go away for a second. Just to say, ladies and gentlemen, we have, as always, some fantastic stuff coming up, as you can see there. So next week, Jeff's colleague, Julian Birkinshaw, on how to become a better manager, following on from Mary Marsh's work from a week ago. But Jeff's colleague and very, very close colleague at London Business School.
Yeah, but he looks a lot older than that now.
I'm not saying a word.
Yeah,
so you can just click that through barcode if you want. And then after that, some of you will know, particularly in Oman, will know Viren Lal, and the last one of the series talking about influence, persuasion, and personal branding. So there'll be that one in 2 weeks' time. They're all there.
Good.
And as ever, ladies and gentlemen, I need to say to you, thank you very, very much indeed for coming to our webinar. Without you, we wouldn't have a webinar, and the wonderful interaction that you provide gives us all the energy, and it makes it 100 times better. Jeff, thank you for all the work that you've put in. Ladies and gentlemen, have a very, very, very good evening.
And you. Thanks, Neil. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.